Hi, this is Tim from Garden Hands. Today or tonight, this is our last batch of V8 that we're going to make. We've made, I don't know, 200 and some odd quarts. We'll hit 220 maybe. Anyway, it's been a good year. This is one of our Brandywine tomatoes, and they're super sweet. They're a delicious tomato. They look kind of different. They're pink on the bottom, and then they'll be a kind of a multicolored on top. And you do waste a little bit when you core them, but they're a real good tomato. I like these and Romas. They're the nicest ones to work with when we're doing this. So anyway, we've washed these up and sorted out the ones that aren't quite ripe. So we'll go through and core these and blanch them tonight and mix in the rest of our vegetables that we put in our V8 and put that in the roaster. And we'll be able to process them the rest of the way then tomorrow morning. It's how we usually do it. So come along for the ride. This is the last one. So when we core them, or when we're doing this, we try and clean out all the ugly spots and the bad lines on them. Kind of look into them when you're doing it. Get those spots off from there. And on the Romas, we just cut a little dab off the end and that makes it peel. Romas peel so nice after you blanch them. They're probably the easiest ones to work with. They almost are off when you take them out of blanching or out of the hot water. Some of these round ones, I think they were called a big beef or something like that. And these they're a good tomato to eat, but they don't blanch as nice. It's just a little more work. They don't fall right off. Maybe we're getting too fussy. Could be. Anyway, the rest of it goes pretty good. It seems like you can blanch about as fast as you can core them once you get 2 pots going. This year we had 70 plants that we planted here at our place, and then Lindsay had another 25 or 30, which sounds like a lot, 100 plants, but yet we gave away 80 quarts of finished product of this V8, but we gave away about probably 10 to 15 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes to a couple of different neighbors and friends. To have that many tomatoes, that many plants is really handy. When you wanted to make a big batch of V8 or salsa or what have you, or if Lindsay and Jody were making something, there was a lot of tomatoes, and that part was pretty handy. Although 10% of the plants haven't given us any fruit yet, so they're still coming. That sucks for them. They're not going to get picked, but it is really nice to have that much to choose from. See inside of that, it's a little bit of void in it, but these are really good. So these aren't the densest, I would say. Maybe like a Roma tomato is fairly dense, pretty full. These aren't as dense. You can see there's some void in there, but they are a real good tasting tomato, and they make such a big tomato. I mean, these are, when you go pick 10 of these, and you got something to do. Next year, we had talked about it a little bit, Jody and I had, and we'll definitely have Roma tomatoes again. Romas are real nice, easy to work with for canning purposes. And the Brandywine, we like that. I'm not sure what this is. It's kind of orange, and this one is ripe. It's soft. And these are a pretty decent tomato too. We'll have to investigate, figure out which one that is. But we'll try and cut down our varieties down to 3 or 4, 5 maybe at the most. We started with 150 plugs, or little squares, but they each had 2 seeds in each one to make sure they grew, or one would grow. So there was 300. And then we had a funeral and cut them in half. And then we had them in too early. This was a learning year for us, and we learned a lot. We did. Right now we're done with our cleaning, and we've cut all our tops off, cored all the tomatoes, and we're blanching. So I'm gonna run around here and kind of get that done. When we blanch them, we get them so their skins are peeling off, so they will peel off real easy once we just set them into water. Cold water is good, ice water is better yet. When we're doing this, we try to get all the skin off, but if we don't, it's for V8 juice, and it's going to get roasted in the roaster overnight, and then we run it through a blender and then through our sieve, and that'll take out some more of the skin if there is some pieces in there. Otherwise, if it doesn't, it's just skin. It's part of pulp, and it's part of a tomato. It isn't anything bad. We'll start out with water and put some ice in, or just start out with cold water, and once it gets warmed up from the tomatoes, we'll put some ice in it to cool it back down again. I guess as long as you can stand holding on to them, it's fine. They don't have to be cooled way down, but I think cooling helps the skin come off a little bit. So we were just talking about Jody's getting kind of sick of doing tomatoes. She likes the kitchen when it's cleaned up, and I do too. So we've made plenty of vegetables. It's been a good year for our crops. We're just getting a little bit of blight right now. We've had plenty, and it's time to be done. And Lindsay was just referencing making maple syrup when we do that. The first time you go out, you're collecting every last drop in the bucket, and as time goes on, you start to, whoops, that bucket spilled, not a big deal. And by the time you get to the end, you're just happy to dump all the buckets out because you're done and tired. And it's similar to that. It's nice to have a good season. Thank goodness we did. And now we can enjoy it for the rest of the winter and look forward to next year and figure out what plants we want to plant or which varieties. And it was fun. It's a good thing. It's a cheap hobby. We're going to cut up our celery, peppers. The beets are already cut enough. We did those earlier, so they're just thawing out. That's enough. They'll be cooked fine, and they'll sieve out just fine. We'll slice up our onions and our carrots, and then we'll be good. When we do our celery, I'd like to split the stalk lengthwise just to see what's inside of the stalk in case it's got a bad middle to it, in case it's not good. Otherwise, we just cut these up into, I don't know, about quarter-inch, quarter to 3/8 inch long, and they haven't ever given us any trouble when they've been cooked. They go through the sieve just fine. So this recipe came from Don and Julie, good friends of ours, and he gave it to us over the phone last year. I wrote it on an old envelope, I think it was. Still have it. And ours doesn't turn out quite the same as his, and I think that's in the blending and sieving, or when we do our sieve. So here's our sieve. Came from Jody's mom. Brand new, 110 years ago. And you just roll this around in there, and takes all the seeds and if there's any skin or string from the celery, takes all the pulp out of it. And we get done with one batch, we'll have probably 3-4 cups of pulp from one batch. So back to Donnie's recipe. What his calls for is 1/2. It's not very precise. It's 1/2 of a bunch of celery. So we usually go with about 6 to 8 stalks, decent sized stalks. I probably have all of 8 in here tonight. It calls for 2 cups of 2 big peppers. So we probably got 3 big peppers, the equivalent of. We use about 1/2 of a beet. Well, our beets were like this, and the ones you buy in the store are 1/4 the size. So this is enough beet in there. Beet is overpowering. It gets that earthy kind of it's good for the color, and we don't need a lot of beet in there. We probably overdo on our peppers, and we do a little more celery and carrots than what the recipe calls for. I don't remember what it called for on carrots, but we end up using this is a 2-pound bag, and we use half of that. So we use about 1 pound of carrots, and we'll use 2 full-size onions. And then we use 3 tablespoons of canning salt, And I think Donnie called for 1/3 of a cup of lemon juice, but we've gone to 1/2 cup of lemon juice. I probably drink about a pint a day of it, but it tastes good. That is the best thing in the morning to drink besides a glass of milk. But the thing that we do occasionally add to it is parsley. If we have some fresh stuff from Lindsay's garden, we'll add some parsley to it, and that's plenty good. And there's other things you can add to it. This is what we have. Obviously, we raise the beets, the onions, the peppers, and the tomatoes, and then we purchase the carrots and the celery. So we can't go and say it's all organic, but a majority of it is. But we know pretty much what's in this, and it's just vegetables. So anyway, we're gonna keep slicing and dicing here, and we'll get it put into our pot or into our roaster and wait for it to be done. So the beets can go in, they just go in whole. So on the carrots, these baby carrots, we quarter them, give or take, maybe cut them into 5 pieces. They don't get cut up that much. They're gonna cook down real well, so they're not a concern. I think I do this just for exercise.
Shoulder therapy?
Shoulder therapy, there you go. Ooh, that's hotter.
Pop your finger off.
Yeah.
No, I went to the ER for a week.
They need money too. We're down to the last step for this batch. Now these small tomatoes, they will process easy. We're gonna get rid of a bunch of those. And then we're gonna scoop in as much of this as we can fit into this roaster. And then this yields that 14 quarts, 13 to 14 quarts of V8 when we're done. So we leave all the juice. Once we get done washing the tomatoes, we put them in a sink and they drain. And then after that, when we blanch them, we leave that juice with them the whole time. And then we have to put in our lemon juice, please. That was 1/2 cup. And 3 tablespoons of pickling salt, or canning salt, whatever you want to call it. So that turned out to be about the right amount of tomatoes to fill a roaster full enough. You don't want to overfill it either. We did that a couple of times and had to take some out. Now we'll stir it up after we've got all the ingredients in there, and we've got it set for about 225 because it's going to go all night. It'll be in here 12 hours. And you can't, or I don't think we can overcook this within reason. If it was in here for 14 hours, it doesn't matter. There's not a set time. Once these vegetables are soft enough to go through our blender or your food mill or whatever, then it's done, because then we get done and we water bath this for 35 more minutes. So I'll put the cover on this. It's 8:50 in the evening. And we won't look at this now till tomorrow. We'll stir it up tonight before we go to bed once, but we won't stir it anymore. And it's set low enough it isn't gonna burn. And we've done every batch like this year. So that's it for now. So sort of see ya. This is ran all night now. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. So we cooked it a little bit longer, but we turned it down to 200 degrees the last few hours. So it's cooked. This part only takes just a few seconds. It doesn't. That's enough to get it pureed enough. Pureed, is that the right word? All right, we'll go with that. Usually there's two of us that do this, so it goes, I don't know, it might take maybe a half an hour to go process this pan. This pan was down a little bit. We're only going to have maybe 12 quarts. Isn't quite as full as we usually do, but that's fine. So as you're working this, and this is called the pestle, you want that to turn. You don't need a lot of pressure on it, just enough to move it, but you want that to be able to turn as it's going around. That should almost propel it, and that'll bring the seeds and any kind of fiber right up with it, so they all end up on it. And we scrape it off pretty good. And you can save all this pulp. So as you can see, it moves all the material down through the sieve, and just like that, it kind of comes back up on this. What doesn't go through the sieve? And for an old invention, I would guess, and they sell new ones also, but I would guess this one, it came from Jody's mom, possibly Jody's grandma. So it's 70, 80 years old, and it still does the job that a new one would. So there we have the rest of everything is through the blender and through the sieve, and then we're going to put it back into the roaster again to warm it up so that it's a little bit warmer when we put it in the jars. I don't know if that's necessary. We did do a couple of batches where we just put it into these and then put it from those into the jars, and I think that it just feels more comfortable to put it back in there and get it hot so it's ready to process, and we know for sure that it's good then. So we'll get this stuff out of the way. So now we're ready to pour this in, and it's the last batch of the season. And then we're going to let this heat back up to about 180, 190 degrees, which won't take too long. And then we'll be able to put it in jars. So we're just starting our last batch for tonight, I think, of V8 juice. I've got a couple of wide mouth jars and the rest are narrow mouth because it's like everybody else, we can't find, or we're getting low on covers or using the jars we have. So anyway, we run our jars. If they're used before, we run them through the dishwasher. And if the dishwasher gets done before we get ready to start putting them in or filling them, we'll put them in the oven to warm them up so that they're warm when we use them. And then we warm up our lids in a water bath in a small saucepan, and I'll put those on here. So this is only the second year that we've made V8 juice, but the people that do eat do drink V8 juice really like this. I think it's the best, I don't know. So there isn't very much extra in V8 juice besides the ingredients that we went through before, and then our salt and lemon juice. And the lemon juice doesn't amount to very much per jar. I guess we get 14 jars out of each batch, or each roaster size. There's two reasons to wipe the top of your jar. One is that you kind of can feel what the jar feels like when you just have one layer of cloth. So you can feel if there's a chip or a nick in that jar. And the other reason is to get it wet and to wipe it and get it clean so that we haven't touched it. So it's clean, it doesn't have any oil or film or juice on it from the tomatoes. And then that seal, the rubber seal that's on the bottom of these, that's right here, you like to keep that, you warm it up so that seal works better and so that it's clean. And we put our rings on and make sure the lid is centered. Your ring goes on, so it's just spun on, and then just a little bit of a turn. It doesn't have to get tightened on like you're a strong man. And they come out just fine, and we take the rings back off when we're done with our water bath. We'll take those back off and store them that way, and we don't ever have trouble with them. They seem to work well. So I'll continue filling these because my timer has 1.5 minutes left on the last batch, or on the batch previous, and we'll get these in the water bath and we'll be able to get in bed before midnight tonight. Maybe. We haven't done this that long, but using a roaster works so nice. It fits our house, our lifestyle, I guess, everything kind of nice. So when we make our V8 juice, it's in our water bath for 35 minutes. That's the longest thing we boil, I think, almost, or pretty close. And they'll come out and they start to pop almost right away. They seem to seal pretty quick. And we do 7 at a time. And it seems to work pretty good. Or 8 pints, I suppose, if you're doing pints. Doesn't make much sense to do a pint of V8 because I drink that much each time I drink it. This is the slowest part of V8 is boiling it, because it does take that amount of time, where a lot of the things you do you know, your pickles or your salsa or whatever else is only 10, 15 minutes. But 35 minutes kind of burns up a lot of time. But see, they're pinging already. But it is good. That's why we do it. So far we've made 180 quarts, give or take, of V8 juice, and we'll make another batch or two. I suppose we'll hit 200. Yes. Quarts of this. It's one way to use up a lot of tomatoes, but it does use a fair amount of other vegetable up. So anyway, we bring them out of here and they start to ping. And when you get done, you should be able to run your hand across the top of the... That one's hot. Ping. You can see the little, if it's a ball lid, they have a small convex sticks up when you get it. This little bitty dent here. When they seal and they ping or pop, that thing that's maybe 3/4 of an inch across will be concaved if it's sealed. If there's still a rise in the middle of your lid, it didn't seal, so that didn't work. So that means your lid gasket wasn't good, or you didn't have it in long enough, or it maybe wasn't tight, but they don't have, I mean, the first year I tightened them way too much, and they're hard to get off then. Where this one, if we had a cold one here, you can just spin it off by hand and it's still sealed. So when they say just finger tight, that's what they mean. But anyway, we're getting to the end of our season. 2 more days or 1 more day we'd be done, I guess. We still have a lot of tomatoes left, so it was a good year. We had a good crop. Everything went well. The tomatoes grew real well. Everybody laughed at my tomato fence. Right now the tomato fence is hanging down about 1 foot in the middle because it's so heavy with tomatoes. But it worked out good, and next year we'll change things a little bit and improve it. So, and then move the tomatoes to a different spot. So, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Tell us you like us, and subscribe. So thanks again. Have a good night.